Hey everyone, this is Chris Nihan with EVready Energy, and I want to talk to you about winning funding tied to EV charging. Now, EVready has plenty of experience in this. We've won $50 million in funding for customers, and there's primarily two different ways that we've done that we want to tell you about so that you can go do it. And if you need assistance with it, of course, we'll help you. So first is utility funding. That's the dark blue that you see here. And then the dark green is state funding that's available out there. But I wouldn't be too concerned that that slice of the pie is less because the combination of the both of them is over $1 billion that's available out there right now. Okay. So what I want to do is talk about the dynamics of state and utility funding so that you can understand how we think about applying for it and winning it. So number one, state funding generally comes from three sources. Number one is Appendix D funding. This is from the Volkswagen mitigation settlement that happened back in 2016, 2017. Next is NEVI funding, which was from the Biden administration. And then the third is just state-built funding, states that are passionate about this and believe that funding should be put towards these types of initiatives. So what are some of the dynamics of state funding? Number one, they usually have windows. So these windows are the time period that you have to apply in order to be eligible for the funding. Usually they're competitive, but sometimes they're first come, first serve, and usually states make that decision dependent on the level of demand. Next, state funding is usually requiring of more compliance than other funding that's out there. Public or private funding use cases are available. You'll see multifamily, you'll see fleet, you'll see workplace buckets that are out there. And the last thing is, we always get the question, well, we're not going to make the stations available to the public. Well, A, that's okay, because again, there's different buckets and the funding amounts will be based on those different buckets. But in many cases, when you kind of talk through it, you can talk through in higher funding percentage buckets based on how you're going to use the stations. And so that's something that companies like EVready would help with. That's state funding. The next type of funding that's the bigger piece of the pie is utility funding. It's generally first come, first serve, and it usually covers the make ready of a charging installation. Sometimes it covers more than that, and that's what we're going to get into next. So how do you think about funding coverage? Now, for states, the way that they think about covering project costs is usually an aggregate of all of these things based on the use case. So maybe the stations are privately privately available for use, then maybe 40 to 60% of all of these costs will be covered. Maybe these stations are on government property and 100% of them can be covered. But there's usually a 40, 60, 80, 100, depending on the use case, funding percentage for the total costs of the project that are eligible. For utility make-ready programs, it's usually a little bit different. So think about this in three different buckets. You have what we call your utility side make-ready. That's your utility service and your utility transformer on the left. Then you have your customer side make-ready, which is your meter, pan, and wiring, your step-up transformer, and your panel. That's generally work that is done by your electrician. And on the right is the cost of the charging stations themselves. And so this is kind of how to think about it is the majority of utility make-ready programs cover all things that are customer and utility side make-ready. Now, there are a percentage of programs that only cover the utility side make-ready, which is all the way in the left. And then there's also programs that cover both of those, but also cover part of the EV charging costs all the way in the right. And so there's a combination of different solutions. What's important for you? You want to find the right funding partner for several reasons. So number one, related to program expertise, there's nuances that exist in these programs that will allow you to go realize more money tied to that program if who you're working with understands that program really well. Number two, charging and energy expertise. So number one, tied to charging, sometimes if you pick certain solutions, you can get more money funded within a program. But how do you think about that? It's something that an expert in the space should be able to understand. And then tied to energy expertise, once you install these chargers, again, there is a cost. Just like we talked about in the battery section, there is a cost to those charging stations and the usage of those charging stations. How are you going to be impacted by the energy usage? If you're working with a utility make-ready program, in many cases, they might have a solution based on how you participate in the program that your funding partner should be able to assist you in. And then the last thing is complete oversight. So a funding partner that will, from A to Z, be able to do all of the applications, work with the utility, work with the state agency in order to get you that funding. If funding is something that you think you want to look at tied to EV charging, please reach out to EVready Energy to schedule a consultation.